So I'll just move on to this sort of social licence issues of the past and how we've turned that into a positive in the future. And many of you might remember in the 1990s, the industry having issues around the use of pesticides. And certainly, insects were developing resistance. They're pretty cunning critters, those insects. They're developing resistance to all the sort of chemicals we could throw at them. As a result of that resistance, that means that our farmers are putting on more and more sprays. As a result of more and more sprays, the local community saying, what's that smell? What's that aeroplane doing? What's the toxicology of this product? And we got to the stage where even our local communities were questioning what we were doing. And when you get to that stage, it's at a tipping point. Something needs to change. And full marks to the industry's leadership back at the time. And I can remember when they did this, they set a target of halving the amount of pesticide we use. Now, some people thought they must have gone out on the drink at lunchtime to come up with a target like, how the hell will you halve the amount of pesticide that we're going to use? But it just shows what setting a bold, ambitious target and everyone in the industry, the researchers, the growers, everyone knuckling down and working towards it. And you get to the stage where today, we've reduced the amount of pesticide used by 90+%. It's a phenomenal effort, and those issues that we had are gone. Cotton these days is using the same amount of pesticides as the chickpea crop or the soybean crop or that sort of thing. It's just not on the radar. So it's just a phenomenal effort as the result of R&D and everyone collaborating. But underpinning all that effort was also our drive towards more responsible cotton production, and that was really helped by our Best Management Practices program. Now, the Bmp program has been around for a while. It started off as a paper-based system. Now it's an online system that our growers use, and there's some 400 checklist items that are helping them know that they're operating at a best practice level in our industry. Now, people say checklist item sounds like a tick and flick. Well, yeah, you go onto that program and you can look at that item, and if you can tick it, that's great. But if you can't tick it, you click on it, and there is all the latest research on that issue. Here's guiding you to how you can reach that best practice. And so, it's a link to the research and the information that you need. And the reason it's not tick and flick is because when you get to the end of it and you request an auditor to come out and make sure you're certified, an environmental auditor is going to come out, and they're not going to be just seeing if you tick the box. They're actually checking that you have done all the things that you say. So if you've ticked there and said that you keep all the weather records from when a spray application went on, well, they're wanting to see the filing cabinet with that in it or the file on the computer. They're going to go around and find out who is the person that's trained in first aid on this farm. Where is that first aid kit? They're going to check all the signage on the chemical shed and the fuel sheds. They're going to make sure the bunding is right. So, it's definitely not a tick and flick. But when you go through that whole process and you get to certification, you know that you're certainly operating at a higher level. So that Bmp program has really underpinned our sustainability and responsibility messages for really the last 20 years. But it's been in the last 3 years that Cotton Australia has really been able to sort of take those messages through a program we're running called Cotton to Market and start to use them to promote Australian cotton on the world stage, to promote our responsible practices. Now, some might wonder, why would we need to go out and promote Australian cotton? Because we're going to produce 4 million bales this year. The Australian cotton shippers, the 17 or so merchants that buy that crop off the grower and sell it to the spinning mills in Asia, they do a wonderful job. They're going to find a home for every one of those bales, I've got no doubt. They do great work. They do it every year. Why would we need to go out and promote Australian cotton? Well, Cotton Australia is going to the other end of the value chain, and we're having discussions with those big global brands and retailers and making sure that they're going to start asking for cotton, asking for Australian cotton, giving them confidence to use cotton. And I think that's the difference. So we're working hand in glove with our colleagues from the Australian cotton shippers to get that story out there. And the way we've been able to do that is through partnerships. And because if we were going to go out and start trying to talk to the Nikes and the Adidases and all those brands, you know, someone's going to rack up a lot of frequent flyer points and a lot of trips. It's going to cost a lot of money. But through some partnerships, we've been able to get access to those global players. One of those partnerships that we've formed was a partnership called Cotton Leads that we formed with the US cotton industry. And it's mainly with Cotton Incorporated, which is their sort of research and development and promotion arm. And certainly the Cotton Leads program now has over 400 major retailers, brand owners and manufacturers right around the world signed on to it. And they're signing on to a program that's all about responsible cotton production and continuous improvement. And we're communicating with them quarterly about the improvements in our production practices, in new R&D advances. It might be post-farm gate in the finishing and the dyeing and whatever of cotton. So we're communicating with these major retailers and brands about the advances. We've also got national level metrics that we can share with them. The things like the reduction in pesticide use, those national metrics, the fact that we're using less land to grow more fibre. And so we can share all that sort of information with them. Now, some people would say to us, why are you working with the US industry? You remember before when I said, well, who are the other major exporters? It's the US. You know, surely they're your competition. Well, no, we don't see it that way. The competition for cotton is the man-made fibres. It's polyester. It's the nylons, polyesters, all those oil-based synthetics. That's the competition. You know, cotton's got to come together and work together and improve our practices and give the end users confidence to use cotton. Because, you know, 30 years ago, cotton was 50+% of the world fibre market. Today, it sits at 30% of the world fibre market. Now, the world fibre market is growing rapidly, so the volumes are growing, but it's still, we're getting swamped by these man-made fibres. And if you go to any of the textile trade shows and look at the sort of promotion of these fibres, they've all got the stand with all clean green stuff on there and smells like cotton, feels like cotton. They all want to be cotton, but they're not. They're a synthetic. And so we do have this natural advantage in cotton, this magnificent natural fibre. So, the challenge is we've got to grow the pie, we've got to grow the market share for cotton, and then we can all share in it, not fight each other on a run to the bottom, denigrating other cotton growths, that cotton from so-and-so, it's terrible, you need to be growing ours. No, we've got to work together to give the end users confidence in Australian cotton, because otherwise all you hear out there in the world about cotton is child labour in Uzbekistan and pesticide poisonings in India and all the negative stories, when there's some fantastic things happening all around the world in cotton production, and we've got to get those good stories out there. The other global partnership initiative that we're involved in is one called the Better Cotton Initiative. Now, this is an interesting one. Cotton Australia actually has a seat on the governing board or governing council of this Better Cotton Initiative, and it's a multi-stakeholder body. It's made up of brands and retailers, of growers, of manufacturers, and of NGOs. So the NGOs like World Wildlife Fund, Solidaridad, Pesticide Action Network, who are not normally bedfellows we would choose, but they're involved in this multi-stakeholder organisation, BCI, and it's really working to lift those standards of cotton production around the world, working with farmers in Pakistan, India, Mali, and around the world to lift those standards. So that cotton can find its way into those big retailers and brand owners. The good news is that cotton that's certified in Australia's Best Management Practices program walks straight into that Better Cotton Initiative. It's obviously at a very high standard. So our growers are starting to be able to sell cotton into that Better Cotton Initiative, and it's been interesting to see that the cotton in that initiative has been sometimes trading at a little bit of a premium. Might be a couple of dollars a bale, up to $8 a bale, but there's sometimes been a little bit in it for the grower, and that's pretty exciting. That it's sort of almost like a message coming back from the brands and retailers to the grower saying, we really value what you're doing. There's a market signal there that they want this. They want these responsible practices and sustainable practices that our growers are using. Now, the Better Cotton Initiative currently sits at about 12% of global production, and their target is by 2020 to be sitting at 30% of global production. So they're working hard on driving demand for this better cotton. We also see that our getting our growers in front of these brands and retailers is really important, because a lot of the people that are working in these brands, they've never been out into a cotton farm. They don't know how cotton's produced. They want to talk about sustainability and responsibility. And when we put our farmers up in front of them and they talk about their passion for growing cotton and what they're doing for their workers and what they're doing for the environment, what they're doing on farm, it's a very special thing happens. The end users and the farmers coming together, we cut all the middlemen out, and they really develop a great understanding, and it really seems to resonate with those global brands and retailers. The industry recently released its first sustainability report, and that was on the back of the third whole of industry environmental audit. So I can remember we did this first whole of industry environmental audit was back in 1991. It was a pretty brave move, an environmental audit on an industry where we were sort of struggling for social licence at the time. And I remember we had the British naturalist David Bellamy's company, Arbor International, came out, and there was a checklist as long as my arms of things that we weren't getting right. There was 70 plus things that we had to work on as an industry. And then 10 years later, when we did it again, the list was down to about 30. And then the last time we've done it, just a couple of years ago, that list is very small. And one of the things that was to get out there and get this sustainability report out, not just inside our industry, but out wider. And at the moment, we've actually got some draft sustainability targets that we've put out there to end users, to brands and retailers, to government, to try and set those targets that we need to aspire to the future. We need to find out what our end users want there, and then start driving towards that. So, one of the reasons why we're doing that is that these major brands and retailers are making commitments. And when you look on the IKEA website, I went and just had a look to see where their commitments were. They were by 2015, they were going to be 100% sustainable cotton, and last year they were 72% of the cotton IKEA used was out of the Better Cotton Initiative, and the rest was from what they called other sustainable sources. And I know Australia was some of that. If you go on Nike's website, they're saying that they're going to be 100% sustainable cotton by 2020. And they're certainly using a stack, and they're saying to them that sustainable cotton is organic or cotton from the Better Cotton Initiative. So these companies are making these commitments. We've got to be working with them to try and future-proof our industry. Because what's going to happen in 2020 when all their commitments, when they've got to meet those commitments if we're not producing the sort of cotton that they want. And this was really driven home to me a few years ago now at a meeting I had with Tesco in the UK. Now, Tesco's a big supermarket chain. It's about the size of Coles and Woolworths together times 2. So pretty big. They've got their own fashion brand. They punch out a fair bit of fashion. And the corporate social responsibility manager sat me down. She said, here's a letter that we've just sent out to all our suppliers of natural fibre. And it's basically said that by 2020, we will only be using sustainable cotton, and that is Better Cotton Initiative, cotton made in Africa, or organic cotton. And at that time, we weren't, the Australian industry wasn't involved at all in BCI. And I said, well, hang on a second, we're not on this list. And I pitched up to her, obviously, the Australian story about Australian cotton, and we left, and I was concerned. And about 3 months later, she emailed back and said, look, we've taken that information that you gave us, we've done the proper diligence process, and I'm pleased to tell you we're adding you to the list of acceptable cottons. Now, the scary thing is we didn't even know we were off the list. And, how many other companies and businesses are there that we might be off the list by 2020 unless we actually get out and tell our story to those brands and retailers, because then they start demanding down to the spinning mills and the manufacturers what they want. And so we've got to be producing what they want. So, that's really the reason, why we're out there telling that story on the global stage. And it's really how we've turned that really tough time for the industry in the 1990s turned that whole social licence story around, where now we're looked at as one of the most responsible and sustainable cotton production countries in the world. And so, yeah, I think that's the Australian cotton industry today. That's the industry that I think every Australian should be really proud of. Thank you.